There's a rumor going around. If you like this video and subscribe, you will have made it to the second stage of the Chunin exams. Your opponent is Naruto Uzumaki, good luck. Hi guys, this is the next part of What if Itachi Uchiha was reincarnated in the world of fairy tale? I hope you enjoy. The port town of Harjan was lost to Demaria and her troops. The once thriving town had been reduced to a burning pile of rubble, with even less than half of its buildings remaining standing after the battle. Demaria's ships were docking at the ruined harbor, the rising sun casting light onto the ruins. On the edge of the town in an empty field, a platoon of Alvarez knights had just finished digging. It was a mass grave. The Alvarez knights proceeded as ordered by their general Demaria, to toss corpses into the grave. They had dragged out the bodies of every dead rune knight, guild wizards, and even bodies of their own men from the ruins of Harjan. Demaria sat in silence, counting the bodies that were tossed into the mass grave. It didn't take long until it was nearly filled up. Demaria's expression could only be described as bored. She looked at her broken blade from her battle against Kagura, shivers of ecstasy running through her body at the memory of Kagura's horrified face. Ah, I can't wait to see my cute little pet again. And more importantly, I can't wait to fight Itachi. My body quivers at the thought. Demaria was however brought out from her thoughts, as she recognized one of the bodies carried by her knights. What do you think you are doing? Demaria froze time, and appeared standing before two knights holding the body of Demaria's second-in-command, Linda. Cleaning up the bodies, ma'am. Demaria looked accusingly at them, telling them to put her down with a harsh glare. Not wanting to die, they complied and gently put Linda's body down. Demaria's expression remained unwavering. She hardly responded upon seeing the body of her pet Linda. Kneeling down before the dead body of her second-in-command, Demaria gently touched her hand onto Linda's ice-cold cheek, noting she looked as pale as any other body. Demaria remained stoic. I honestly expected her to live longer. Demaria stroked her hand down across Linda's body, gently gracing her hand over the cut left by Beatrice's blade. To have died in the very first battle, she must have fought someone strong. Her gaze intently stared at the cut on Linda's body. Demaria's eyes glimmered with what could only be described as a sense of pride. Linda had lived her life exactly as Demaria wanted, on the battlefield until she came across a better opponent. In Demaria's mind, there was no other ending as beautiful as dying to a worthy opponent on the battlefield. Dragging down the cloth mask across Linda's lower face, Demaria gave a small peck on Linda's cold icy blue lips. Sleep well, darling, it's been fun. Demaria's soldiers could never get used to her rather extreme personality, and merely stood there on the spot at a loss for words. Should be dispose of the body, ma'am, one of the knights stammered nervously. Yes, go right ahead. Although, make sure she gets a private grave. Get to digging, boys. Demaria waved them off and went to oversee the construction of their camp in Harjan, taking the time for her troops to rest up until they were given further orders to advance on Magnolia by their emperor. Meanwhile, down in the southern continent, soaring through the blue sky, the blue little exceed happy carried his battle-hungry dragon slayer companion, Natsu. And before them, were a small platoon of Alvarez Imperial cruiser ships, with their emperor in the lead on the ground with a whole battalion of troops and one of the Spriggan 12 Invul. Zirf. A strong desire to kill started burning within Natsu's heart as he caught a whiff of the scent of death emitting from Zirf. Happy looking slightly perplexed as flames started burning around Natsu's body. Natsu, are you alright? Happy asked. He had never seen Natsu like this. Sure, Natsu had always desired a good fight with strong opponents, but he had never burned with such a desire to kill someone. I'm fine, pal, get ready to drop me, I will take care of those ships. Natsu's tone held a sense of anger. Happy seeing his friend like this, couldn't help but get a little worried. Natsu, maybe, we should wait for Itachi, yeah, I mean, this is the black wizard Zirf we are talking about. Are you crazy? This is the perfect chance to smoke Zirf for good. Trust me, I got this. Natsu dismissed Happy's idea, flames already beginning to burn in a blazing inferno around his fists. But, what's wrong with you, Happy? Don't tell me you are chickening out on me. Natsu seemed angry. Natsu getting angry wasn't anything new, but this felt different. This didn't feel like Natsu's anger. Now, max speed. If you say so. Happy complied and soared like a blue rocket through the sky. What was he thinking? Natsu probably just wants to end this war before anyone gets hurt. Yeah, that's it. Natsu wasn't the one acing different, it was just the situation that was different. Well, at least Happy hoped that was the case. Great buddy, now drop me. Natsu smirked, as flames generated around his entire body. Aye sir. Happy with his tiny paws flung Natsu forward, and Natsu took off like a flaming homing missile. Fire Dragon. Sword Horn. Cloaked in fire, with the tip shaping like a dragon's horn. Natsu plummeted from the sky, and straight towards the leading cruise ship. The sheer heat unleashed from him, melting the air cruiser ship's cannons, and burning their sails. Ah, hot, hot, and Alvarez Knight frantically tossed a cannonball that was starting to melt within the palm of his hand. What followed, was their very armor that started to melt as well. Screams of sheer agony came from the ship, and Natsu hadn't even made contact with them yet. Get out of my way, Natsu roared, as he crashed straight into the deck of the ship. Burning straight through the lower levels, knocking away frantic knights struggling with their melting armor that was cooking them alive. As Natsu crashed out from the bottom end of the ship, all the lacrima bombs within the ship caught fire and exploded. The ship burst into flames and broke apart in a brilliant colorful blue explosion from all the lacrimas. Spinning midair, Natsu gathered all the flames around his arms, as he was now in the center of all the airships. Flames spreading out from his arms like the wings of an actual dragon. And now, Fire Dragon, Wing Attack. Natsu's spinning torrent of fire smacked into the ships, catching them in a blaze, surrounding him like a ring of fire, and then the ships exploded around him. The knights on the ground with Zirf couldn't help but gawk at the sheer destructive power Natsu carried. Invul, not looking that concerned, looked to Zirf. Your Majesty, are you sure you want to face him? If you want, I could. Invul, if you interfere in this, I will kill you. Zirf smiled so calmly at his most trusted and loyal pawn. Yet despite his calm demeanor and tone of voice, Zirf's eyes burned strongly with killing intent. Taken aback at his master's threat, Invul backed up with a little sweat running down his forehead. As you wish, Your Majesty. Zirf, Natsu roared as he crashed into the ground, setting the land ablaze and making all the Alvarez troops yelp in fright. Zirf greeted the flaming hothead with a genuine smile of pure joy. Natsu, so glad you could make it. A whirlwind of sheer darkness emitted from Zirf. Despite the heat unleashed from Natsu, the space around them felt like the cold embrace of death. Happy, watching from a safe distance, couldn't help but think this was a bad idea after all. Natsu, I hope you know what you are doing. Get him. The knights gathered their courage, seeing as Natsu was alone. They all charged straight at Natsu, with their magic staffs gathering magical energy into spheres from their lacrima orbs. I suppose it would be nice to have Natsu warmed up before our battle. Zirf hummed, seeing no trouble in Natsu taking on his army of 1,000,000 troops. Natsu took a giant leap forward at the incoming troops, flames gathering in a violent torrent across his right forearm. With a mighty war cry, Natsu punched his arm forward, sending the blazing fire blasting out in a wave of explosion, the flames instantly eradicating the front wave of the incoming troops. Natsu's flames still raged on forward, tearing apart the terrain and catching it ablaze. Little punk, one of the knights stammered and was met with a fist straight to his face, his helmet shattering in an instant as he was flung backwards, knocking 10 other knights over like dominoes. Taking a small turn, Natsu spat out a single small ball of fire, sending it blasting into an Alvarez knight who had charged up a magic blast. The knight was pushed away by the fireball. The fireball, despite being small, pushed on with great force and burnt strongly as it melted through his armor plate. The knight screamed as he was sent flying into the ocean, and the fireball exploded. The sheer heat causing some steam to rise from the now boiling water. Blast him! A knight shot a magic blast at Natsu. Natsu, keeping his gaze on Zirf at the end of this wave of soldiers, casually smacked the incoming blast away with no effort. He didn't even cloak his arm with magic, and yet he deflected the blast so easily. Some knight already had begun panicking. Do not falter. All soldiers surround him and open fire. The knights moved around Natsu, covering any escape route. Then they opened fire on the Dragon Slayer, their various torrent of attacks pushing Natsu a little bit. Feeling like annoying mosquito bites. Fine, you guys wanna pick a fight, I will burn you to the ground. Inhaling his breath, Natsu prepared for a mighty breath attack to clear his path to Zirf. Fire Dragon. Roar. Natsu unleashed a vast sea of pure fire, the flames burning through the wave of knights before him, and even roasting the ones around him alive from the sheer heat affecting their armor. Natsu's blast had completely burned a charcoal scar into the landscape. Monster. The remaining knights shakingly took a few steps back. How many did he kill with that one blast? 1,368. Zirf stepped up to the playing field, walking through the burnt landscape. You eliminated a grand total of 1,368 soldiers out of 1 million. And more seemed to be dropping by the second. Zirf looked around, seeing still some knights veiling in agony while being roasted in their own armor. I think you have warmed up quite enough. I have waited for this, Natsu. Our very first battle. Zirf unleashed a dark aura from his body. And it will be our last, because this is goodbye, Zirf. Natsu smirked as he began removing the cloth wrapped around his right arm. Lightning also sparking within his cloaked body of fire. I am going to take you down, with everything I got. I do hope so, otherwise I would be very disappointed. Zirf presented himself to Natsu, not even putting up a guard to defend himself from any attack. Natsu, not taking notice, just sprang into action, instantly jumping into his lightning flame dragon mode. Blazing fire mixed with lightning exploding from his forearm and took a giant leap towards Zirf. Natsu's fist shooting like a rocket at Zirf, the black wizard remaining unfazed by Natsu's attack, even when the fire detonated into a brilliant explosion. The grass and the soil burnt away by the fire, and the earth cracked upon by the crackling lightning strikes. Everyone watched on in silence, waiting for the burning black smoke from the attack to clear away. And when it did, gasps filled the air, as Zirf had caught Natsu's blazing fist with one hand with some black ooze coming from the black wizard's palm. However, Zirf had not come out this easily, the forearm cloth of Zeref's cloak having been burnt away and his arm itself having suffered minor burns from Natsu's fire. He injured his majesty. A knight looked on in shock. Natsu, I hope you know what you are doing. Happy sweated as he flew far above, knowing he couldn't get closer without risking Zeref's waves of death reaching him. Invul, take the men and retreat for now. I would hate to lose this many troops over something trivial as this. Zirf ordered. This reunion between him and Natsu shouldn't be something these soldiers should die for. Although, Natsu, unaware of what Zirf knew, couldn't help but feel insulted over their fight being called trivial, made Natsu seem like less of a threat in his mind. As you command, move out. His Majesty shall clear the path for us, personally. On Invul's commands, several soldiers gave a breath of relief over getting to skip fighting Natsu. We ain't handin' over the first to you. Natsu growled. Things have unfolded to this level, only because you failed to destroy me. Although I suppose that fault is not yours alone. Itachi and Madara didn't try either. Zeref's words held no meaning for Natsu. I never understand what the hell is coming out of that mouth of yours. Not that I give a damn. All I know, is that if I want to protect my friends, I gotta destroy you. Hey, yes, I suppose that fault lies with me. I never did bother properly explaining our relationship to you after all. I guess, a part of me had hoped you always knew. In response to Zeref's words, Natsu delivered a lightning-fast strike with a fire-cloaked kick aimed at Zeref's head. Zirf blocked the kick with his left forearm, seeming to shake a little under the weight of Natsu's strength. Zirf, seeing Natsu's furious-looking face, could only smile. Perhaps, deep down, you've always known after all. Zirf began laughing, his mocking laughter angering Natsu further. Natsu gave a fiery elbow straight into Zeref's face, breaking his nose in the process. Followed by mighty right hook that knocked Zirf off balance, and then a kick straight into Zeref's chest. Fire exploded from the sole of Natsu's feet, sending Zirf flying like a rocket through the terrain of rocks. Lighting flame dragon. Roar. Natsu unleashed a mighty roar, straight to where Zirf was sent flying to. The blast connecting right into the ravine where Zirf had crashed and detonated into a brilliant explosion that left a giant smoky mushroom cloud. You running your mouth all the time is really starting to piss me off. Apologies. Perhaps we should put an end to this talking. Zirf appeared behind Natsu, looking a little banged up, although all his bruises and burns healed away like nothing. But I must say, you haven't done much to impress me so far. Zirf slammed his palm into Natsu's chest, generating a sphere of darkness. Its dim dark purple light shining brightly, as it and Natsu blasted off into the sky. Anksarum Formula 1. Death Ball. Zirf moved his right hand in a circular fashion, holding his middle and index finger out. His magic drawing a circle of magical energy in the air. Relish in the magic of the god of death and find peace. Raising his hand upwards, his two fingers glowed in a purple light. And the next moment, the black sphere carrying Natsu expanded in great size. Natsu's cries of pain echoed as the sphere detonated in an explosion of darkness. Anything it encountered, be it animals, trees, mountains, all was erased from existence. AAARRRRGGGGHHHHH. Natsu's cries turned into an animalistic roar, as flames exploded from around his body, burning away the darkness of Zeref's spell. That does it, I'm done warming up, Natsu smirked within the sphere, as his flames turned bright red like the scales of Igneal. And the darkness was erased instead. Zeref looked in awe, as Natsu stood there bare without any injury. The arm he had once cloaked with a cloth had been left bare, revealing a red dragon tattoo on his arm. Now I got a fire in my belly. Natsu soared like a rocket with this new fire around him, back at Zeref. Let's do this. Natsu slammed his fist straight into Zeref's chest. AGKH. Zeref gawked, his ears ringing along with his bones. As Natsu's punch sent a vibration of pain through his body, Zeref was sent blasting backwards, showing no sign of stopping. Natsu didn't let up and took chase. Really started throwing it in at Zeref. Each punch Natsu threw carried his full power, and each punch caused an explosion of this red fire. Zeref couldn't even register what was happening as he was being bombarded again and again from Natsu's punches. The red fire had begun catching the very land area around them on fire. It burned so strongly, that after this battle was over there might not even be an island here anymore. Interesting. Zeref smiled in between the punches and sent a blast of darkness towards Natsu's head. Natsu ducked his head back, narrowly avoiding the blast as he was left with a nasty scar on his right cheek. These flames, have you finally achieved it, Natsu? The flames I blessed you with. Zeref smiled with glee. Tell me, what is that power of yours? Zeref asked. He had to be sure. I inherited this power from Igneal. Upon Natsu's declaration, Zeref was left in a state of bewilderment. The last of the power that Igneal left behind inside of me, it took 10 months of training to be able to unleash it. The last of Igneal's power. Zeref raised his brow, seeming in doubt of Natsu's words. Well, not entirely. Yeah, and this is a one-time deal. After this power will never regenerate. The last power of Igneal is what I am going to use to destroy you. And I call this Blaze Dragon King mode. Upon this declaration, Natsu was caught off guard when Zeref only began to laugh. Hey, quit it, don't you dare mock Igneal. Oh, far from it, dear Natsu. I am not mocking Igneal, rather I am mocking you. Zeref took a gander around, seeing the earth around them caught in a blaze from this red fire. Although within the fire, something dark was beginning to flicker. Although this power is quite remarkable, Igneal had very little to do with it. Natsu raised his brow, and in anger pointed at his dragon tattoo. This is a mark left behind from Igneal. It is the last of his power. Natsu pointed out, the tattoo itself slowly getting burnt away. That's why I said Igneal only had a little to do with it. Zeref stated, earning questioning looks from Zeref. Indeed, some of Igneal's power is being used in this magic of yours. I can sense it, although, the nearer it reaches its end, the true nature of this power starts to shine through. What the hell are you talking about? Natsu roared, and in response Zeref blasted Natsu with a magic wave of pure darkness. In response Natsu held his hands out, catching the blast, incinerating it with his flames in an instant. Igneal, although he was powerful, didn't have the power to burn away Ethernano in itself. Yet, your flames, the so-called flames of Igneal, just burnt away my attack, leaving it without a trace. This power, it isn't Igneal, it's me. Zeref smirked and Natsu looked taken aback at the declaration. I still don't understand what you are yapping on about. Natsu was eager to just jump and punch Zeref in the face. Then shut up and listen. Zeref suggested, like I said, this power is what I gave you. Not Igneal. Although, I must say I am disappointed that you have only barely tapped into it after 10 whole months of training, no, after all these years. And this is all the power you have managed to harvest from what I gifted you. Gifted? What power could you have gifted me? We never met each other until that day on Tenro Island. Natsu pointed out, and Zeref with a menacing smirk merely chuckled. To answer your question, we know each other from way before that. That was only our long-awaited reunion. And as for the power, Zeref couldn't contain himself, and found himself chuckling, his eyes beginning to glow red. Natsu felt sick to the stomach from Zeref's laughter, and in annoyance just shouted. Spit it out already, you freak. Zeref halted himself from laughing, and after a few seconds of awkward silence, he smiled. Hey, his face looking more menacing, as his body oozed of pure darkness. Why, the curse power of END, of course. Natsu fell into silence, his mind trying to process the words coming out from Zeref's mouth. And while in this daze, Natsu could only shakingly stutter out a few words. What did you just say? Hey, what an unsightly face you are making. Aetherius Natsu Dragneel, or rather, END for short. Zeref smiled cruelly upon this scene of what appeared to be a nervous breakdown on Natsu's part. Natsu's pupils were shrunken, his eyes wide like saucers, and sweat dripping from his body. I don't understand. My full name, is Zeref Dragneel. I am your older brother, Natsu. Zeref's declaration was met with wide confusion, not just from Natsu, but also Happy, who was listening in. 400 years ago, our parents were killed by dragons. And you perished along with them. A mere child, at the age of 4. Natsu began hyperventilating, his very being trembling. Some repressed memories from a past long since forgotten, trying to push its way to the surface. No, you lie, after all, as Natsu was about to declare himself still alive. For years I studied ways to resurrect the dead, using the ancient scripts of the gods, particularly the god of death Anxarum. I learned quite a lot. About beings far beyond our human knowledge of existence. I was able to do what none other had done before. I deciphered the texts of the gods, and I learned things about the gods and their enemies, the demons. Zeref's mind recalling the ancient scriptures he read and translated as a young boy. Recalling the image of one character, a massive demonic-like monster cloaked in darkness. The Demon King, a renegade god, formerly the god of the underworld, now an unholy creature defying the will of the gods themselves. Took the underworld as his domain and tamed its wildlife of monsters and beasts beyond our world's understanding. Creating a new species of life, that would be known as demons, contrasts to heaven's angels. Demonic creatures of darkness, clashing with angelic beings of pure light. A war was raged, a war going on behind the scenes while humanity remained unaware. And a war that still wages till this very day. Anyway, I digress. These demons had one ability they all shared in common. Regeneration. They could easily heal any injury that otherwise would have been lethal for us humans. Zeref's mind tracing back to when he was a mere teenager, trying to summon demons through various rituals. Only for them all to turn out to be fake. I wanted that power from them, to heal you, to revive you. For many sleepless nights, I studied, and studied. I trained my magical skills to eventually face a demon. Learning the skills through the texts of Anxarum. But that was a mistake. Dead bodies began falling around the young black wizard Zeref. He had achieved a power far beyond his control. Or rather, he was cursed. Cursed with the curse of contradiction by Anxarum. Life around me would die the more I valued life. I became something that was neither dead, nor alive, some unholy existence in between. Immortal. Time passed by, and Zeref's body had stopped growing. He forever looked like a young man that hadn't even reached his 20s. He continued to study, dead set on bringing life into his younger brother. I had hoped that if you got your life back, then all of this wouldn't have been for nothing. A random event. No, an anomaly taking place in the wilderness. Zeref stood before a portal of some kind, unbeknownst himself of the nature of this portal, a figure walked out from it. My prayers were somehow answered, and a demon appeared before me. He had heard of my struggles and felt my ever-growing power that felt nearly godlike, as he put it. He offered me a deal. He would tell me where some demons would appear, and their abilities. The Demon King wished to expand his kingdom and had planned to send his elite force to conquer Earthland. Zeref stood on some mountain from the looks of it, and before him appeared 13 shadowy figures of darkness. I agreed and followed the demon's instructions while he went off on his own, declaring himself to be free at last. I faced off against these 13 elite warriors. They called themselves the Sacred 13. Quite an ironic name for a demon group, I must say. Each one had powers beyond what I expected, despite my intel. And their leader, well, he would even put Acnoloviato to shame. As I fought them, I noticed. My curse had no effect on them, they wouldn't die. Seeing as they were demons, the curse of a god probably wouldn't have that effect on them like with humans. Luckily, I came prepared, with another ability of the gods. And managed to trap them all in a seal. Although, I barely came out of it alive. If it wasn't for my immortality giving me a good durability, and the element of surprise, I would without a doubt be dead right now. Removing the top of his robe, Zirf showed Natsu the scar on his upper body, left by the leader of the Sacred 13. In hindsight, I probably should have let that demon leader kill me. That way, we wouldn't be here, but then again, the world would have fallen to demonic rule. So Natsu was still too shaken to even speak and could only stand there and listen. Even as the last bit of power from Igneal was slowly burning away, Zirf continued his little story. Anyway, after having gotten some samples of their power and DNA, a new goal sparked in my head. I could revive my brother, and die at the same time. For only a demon or a god can kill an immortal, is what I learned that day. So, my research expanded, and after decades, I was able to create these lifeforms known as Aetherius from the demon's DNA and using a dead human host body. That is what you are, Aetherius Natsu Dragneel. END, just like Itachi, Madara, Kisame, Sasori and Kakuzu as well. Although, unlike the ones from Tartaros, I revived each of you with your original soul intact. Well, for Itachi it was his body first, and then his soul, hence his E-persona was born. And you, well, let's say something similar happened there as well. Natsu, what are you doing? Snap out of it, Happy shouted from above, earning a scornful look from Zirf. Don't listen to his lies. Igneal's power is almost gone. Yeah, there is no way any of that bull is true. I died 400 years ago. I am the younger brother of Zirf. And I am END. That's bullshit, Natsu shouted, yet his eyes seemed uncertain of his own words. He didn't want to believe any of what Zirf said is true. I am human, damn it. END is that demon that created Tartaros, and that sure as shit ain't me. Tartaros was created by Mard Gear, who used the Book of END and E to unify the other demons and control them. Calling it END's will, Zirf summoned forth the Book of END and the Book of E. Lies. All lies. Natsu charged at Zirf with his fire burning stronger than ever. So, you are saying Itachi is lying? I created him into E, and brought him into this world. Are you saying his truth is a lie? No, Itachi's not a. You are just trying to get into my head. Natsu had enough and gathered all his firepower into his right hand, aiming to end Zirf. Zirf sighed and dropped the Book of END. You never were a good listener, even back then. A beam shot out from his finger and straight through the book. Gawk. Natsu gawked, his fire lowering itself, as a hole punctured through his chest just like the book. Tell me, can you still call me a liar? Zirf asked, as it was evident, the moment Zirf struck that book, Natsu felt pain. Natsu fell onto his knees, his right hand clenched over the punctured hole in his chest. His bright red blood dripping down from between his fingers. And no, it's gotta be a trick. I ain't END, I'm human. Natsu coughed up a small puddle of blood, anger washing over his face as he let out an animalistic growl. A trick, you say? Zirf slammed his foot onto the book, grinding it against the hole he had blasted through it. And Natsu rolled over in pain, the sound of his flesh groaning as if Zirf was stepping on his wound instead of the book. This book is your life essence, it is connected to you. Shut up, Natsu roared, pushing himself up, pure adrenaline rushing through his body, as he leapt at Zirf, attempting to slug him across the face with a fiery fist. Anksarum Formula 5, Death Bolt. The clouds circled above them, turning pure black. And coming raining down onto Natsu, a massive surge of dark purple lightning bolts. The surge of electricity through his body, numbing Natsu's muscles, leaving him paralyzed. Natsu fell face first to the ground, skidding his body forward before Zirf's feet. Natsu's flames snuffed out in an instant, forcing him to lay on the ground and listen to Zirf. You never were a good listener, even back then. No matter how much I tried to teach you, you refused to learn anything. Be it language, or a written word. Thus, I ended up seeking advice from Igneal, my close friend. This piqued Natsu's interests. Despite his numb body, Natsu peeked up at Zirf. Close friend. As I am sure you know, there were two kinds of dragons a human could encounter back in the day. Those that opposed to associate with humans, and only considered them food. And those that were not opposed to associate with humans. Like Igneal, he was a rare breed indeed, such power, yet he didn't think less of humans. I happened to meet him one day, while I was collecting medicinal herbs to cure E, whose body was starting to show signs of sickness. Natsu gasped, recalling way back when Itachi suddenly got sick during the Battle of Fairy Tail. Zirf continued with his tale. After having befriended Igneal and having informed him of my dilemma, He offered me a deal. Zirf lifted Natsu's head up to make eye contact. By lifting Natsu's chin up with his foot, Igneel offered to teach you Dragon Slayer magic. And you, were so excited. Finding Igneel to be fascinating and cool in your childlike eyes. You keep spouting all this bullshit, yet I don't remember you at all. Natsu hissed at Zirf, as the factor remained Natsu had no recollection of Zirf from his childhood. Then do tell me, do you remember the first day you meet Igneel? Zirf gave a snarky-looking smirk that only pissed Natsu off. Of course Natsu halted himself, as upon reflection. Trying to recollect his memories, Natsu couldn't remember a time in his early childhood without Igneel. In fact, the first thing he remembers about his life was his life in the wilderness with Igneel. He couldn't remember anything before that, he couldn't even remember how Igneel found him. You can't remember, right? Zirf chuckled at seeing Natsu's confused expression. The Eclipse Gate is to blame, Zirf revealed, and Natsu looked with even more confusion. Like I said, I recreated you and Itachi into ethereous demons hundreds of years ago. Now tell me, how do you think you got to this time period? Natsu was at a loss for words. Igneel, along with Metallicana and the other pacifist dragons, hatched a plan to raise and groom dragon slayers and take them into the future using the Eclipse Gate. And once they arrived in that time period, they would conceal themselves within your bodies. All for the sole purpose of defeating Acnologia. Before Natsu could even question it, Zirf answered. Why the need for time travel, you ask? Well, although a cruel truth in reality, the dragon's existence caused the Ethernano to be divided between the number of living creatures that practiced magic. That is also a part of the reason why the anti-human dragons sought to destroy humanity, in order to keep the Ethernano for themselves. With the Ethernano so divided, the dragon's powers began to weaken. Igneel knew that if they had any hope of stopping Acnologia, they needed to travel to an era with an abundance of Ethernano. Even if it meant the doom of their own race, if they could correct their mistake by eliminating their dark legacy, Acnologate would be worth it. Ironic enough, the solution to correcting their mistake was to teach you brats Dragon Slayer magic, which is the source of what caused Acnologia to be born in the first place. Memories seemed to be returning to Natsu, as he gasped, having realized who these brats were. That's right, Zirf smirked. The children chosen for this plan were Gajiel, Wendy, Sting, Rogue, and you, of course, Natsu. Igneel wanted you, seeing the immense power I had gifted you, as a source of hope that Acnologia could be defeated. The so-called dragon you call your father took you in with the intention of using you. And in return, Igneel would make sure you grew strong enough to kill me one day. However, Igneel did not count on one thing. Natsu, feeling like he had taken a punch to the gut. Igneel was only using him. No, that couldn't be true. Igneel loved him like if he was his own child. Bastard, Natsu snarled at Zirf. He did not count on that he would grow to love you so. And then, his plans changed. Zirf this time snarled, anger flashing in his eyes. Igneel used his powers to suppress END within you, wanting to spare you of such a fate and wanting to make sure you lived. Igneel's plan changed to him bidding his time for the right moment to strike and take Acnologia down himself. And, well, we all know how that turned out. Zirf chuckled. Natsu's mind flashed to Igneel's fried corpse in the aftermath of Tartaros. His hands balling into fists, feeling some relief and happiness that Igneel cared about him like he originally thought. Although was left with a sour taste in his mouth, as Igneel had basically sacrificed his own life to protect Natsu from Acnologia. I see, Igneel wanted to protect me from Acnologia. Wrong. Zirf corrected, he wanted to protect you from me. In fact, Igneel wished for you and me to never meet again. For he knew, no matter how much he tried to suppress it, the instincts of END would always remain in you, the instincts to kill me. What? Why would he need to protect me from you then? Natsu felt it, he was itching to kill Zirf right here and now. I'm getting to it. Anyway, when you kids and those dragons leapt through the eclipse, with the help of another friend of mine named Anna, a celestial mage who opened the gate. In order for the eclipse gate to work, it need to be open in another era as well. So, Anna passed down a journal through her clan in accordance with the dragon's plan. To find the era with the perfect amount of Ethernano for you kids to develop and grow stronger. And, again with these so-called friends going behind my back, Anna threw my precious E into the gate with you as well. I am not quite sure why, but he seemed to arrive earlier into the future than you all did. His name is Itachi. Natsu snarled, sick of hearing Zerf refer to Itachi, his friend, as E. Zerf, however, ignored Natsu and merely continued. And in the future, Anna's descendant, Layla Heartfilia, the mother of your dearest friend Lucy, opened the Eclipse Gate. That was July 7th, on the year X 777. The day you all thought your dragons disappeared. In reality, this was the day you reached the future era. You are all children born 400 years ago in the past. And the reason, you don't remember having met either Gajeel or Wendy before you encountered each other in this era. And the reason you don't remember me, is the Eclipse Gate's strange magical power, having affected your tiny little minds. Making several events in the past seem like a mere dream, and like any dream you all eventually forgot. The reason you all remembered your dragon parents, was because they were so close and dear to your hearts. And they were the last faces you saw, before going to sleep the night Anna sent you all through the gate. Shut up, Natsu grumbled, shaking in anger. I waited, for so long. But 400 years is a very long time. Many things transpired, I witnessed countless eras come and go. My empathy of the true weight of human life and death began to erode. I met Mavis. And then I lost her. Shut up, there is no way I am believing this bullshit fantasy story of yours. Natsu's muscles were tense as he tried to power through the paralyzing surge of electricity in his body. His flames aching up, and igniting, his muscles tensing and expanding. And finally, as for why Igneal wanted to protect you from me. You, as a demon of the Book of Zerf. Once you kill me, you will cease to exist as well. Like I give a damn, Natsu roared, able to push himself up onto his knees, as the red fire burned strongly around him. Natsu, happy unable to watch anymore, didn't even think of the danger and flew to Natsu. Annoying little creature. Zeref's eyes glowed red, directing his palm at Happy. Anksarum Formula 8, Death Warp. The space before Happy, started twisting itself and warping in a black mist of death, threatening to rip the blue feline apart the moment he would get into contact with it. Yet, the red fire around Natsu exploded in his fit of rage. The warped space threatening to kill Happy, erased in the violent fire. And Natsu meeting Zerf with a headbutt knocking Zerf back several feet. Thus, Happy halted himself midair, tears welling in his eyes at seeing his friend struggle. Happy couldn't get near Natsu without being burnt to ashes. Happy, having no other choice. While weeping uncontrollably, Happy took off and flew back to the battlefield. Hang on Natsu, I will get you help. Happy cried, knowing he needed backup to save Natsu. All Happy knew, was if Zerf was telling the truth, if Natsu killed Zerf, Natsu would die as well. And the last thing Happy wanted, was for his best friend, his father figure to die. Happy, don't you worry. I will kill this bastard. Natsu, blinded with rage, refused to believe Zeref's story. No matter how much Natsu was struck with a strange feeling of nostalgia from hearing it. Let's end this already. Flames coming out from his feet, Natsu blasted forward like a rocket. Homing in on Zeref, his fists cloaked in the intense red fire. Zeref having no time to react, as he was still recovering from Natsu's headbutt earlier. Zeref was slugged across the face by Natsu, the red burning fire leaving a nasty-looking mark on his cheek. Natsu didn't let up, and ruthlessly continued his assault on Zeref. Blaze Dragon King, Meteor Shower. Natsu's fists of fire were raining down onto Zeref like giant blazing meteorites. The crushing weight of Natsu's fists rustling Zeref's body to its very core. In response to all this abuse, Zeref's body released a dome of black energy. The energy itself pushing Natsu back, thus ending his assault. Natsu was sent flying, steadying himself as he firmly landed onto the ground. Natsu panted, feeling a little winded from that attack earlier. While Zeref was laughing. His collarbone, his ribs, his left arm broken and his right shoulder dislocated. Zeref looked creepy in Natsu's eyes, Zeref's jaw hanging loose as Natsu had broken it with his punches. Zeref's entire body covered in serious burns, leaving nearly all of his skin cracked and charcoaled black, with flashes of pink flesh showing a bit here and there. Zeref straightened his jaw, and snaps his dislocated right shoulder back into place. All of his injuries from Natsu healing in an instant. My, as always you have quite the aggressive fighting style, Natsu. But that's just fine, I wouldn't expect anything less from END after all. Zeref chuckled, hardly fazed by Natsu's attack. I already told you, I ain't END. Natsu roared in anger, and charged once again, the flames gathering into the size of a miniature-looking red sun in the palm of Natsu's hand. Blaze Dragon King. Arcturus Star Blast. I wonder, how long will you be in denial? Zirf, in a mimic of Natsu's movements, created what resembled a black dying star in the palm of his hand. Anksarum Formula 13. Dying Star. Both their attacks clashed against each other, and suddenly Zerif's attack began eating Natsu's. The black-looking star sucking in the red burning fire from Natsu's attack into a vortex. Their attacks exploding into a burst of radiating colors, the colorful gas clouds surrounding them. The Alvarez Knights along with Invul looked on in awe, at the display of power in the battle before them. Using the forbidden techniques of the God of Death, His Majesty certainly doesn't care for Anksarum's wrath. Then again, what more can the God of Death do to him? Invul mumbled to himself. The colorful gas clouds then instantly shrunk into a tiny white dot glint in between the palms of Zirf and Natsu. Natsu standing in awe, seeing the white glint shining between him and Zirf. His arms shaking, feeling the weight of the attack. The glint then imploded into a brilliant explosion, Natsu crying out in pain, as the shockwave of the blast sent him flying. Whereas Zirf merely skidded back a few feet. Zirf sighed, as he watched Natsu crash land into the ground, rolling in the dirt. Natsu's body looked all beaten up, covered in bruises and minor cuts. This power of yours was meant to destroy me, yet, you have left me with a mere shell of what I was promised. I do hope this isn't the end, Natsu. Otherwise, I would be sorely disappointed. Perhaps, I did overestimate you after all. Normally, Natsu would get more excited and retort with he was just getting warmed up. But, hearing Zirf say that, only angered him further. The fight ain't over yet. Natsu leapt back at Zirf, his fiery fist clashing with Zerif's open palm. The sheer force of their powers making the ground beneath them sink into a crater. The ground cracking and exploded as if Gildarts himself used his crash magic on it. The eyes of the two brothers locked at one another, one staring with pure malice, the other with pure rage. Natsu was really feeling the situation coming crashing down on him. He had no idea Zirf was this powerful. The two flared their auras, Natsu's bursting into a violent torrent of red fire reaching to the clouds, and Zirf with a black whirlwind of death. My, I wonder, how strong will you be once Igneal's power is gone, Zirf said with heavy sarcasm in his voice, as he eyed the dragon tattoo on Natsu's arm getting burnt away by the second. Its lower body had already vanished along with its left wing. Strong enough to take the rest of your people down. After I use Igneal's power to erase you. Natsu roared, and reared his left fist backwards. The red fire surging with also volts of electricity. Lightning Blaze Dragon King. Demolishing Fist. Such bravado. Zirf snickered, the battle really bringing out his dark malicious persona. Natsu threw his punch, shooting his fiery fist at Zirf like a rocket with flames blasting out from Natsu's elbow to add to the impact. Natsu's attack echoing through the battlefield like a massive explosion as it made contact with its target. The lightning bolts from the attack, tearing through the landscape, the fire putting their entire surroundings in a blaze. Natsu hissed, his eyes glaring daggers at Zirf. Zirf stood there, smiling, having caught Natsu's fist mere inches away from his face. Zerif's hand had been badly burnt, his skin having burnt away leaving his hand red and bloodied. Natsu still tried to push his fist forward, adding more power to his arm, yet Zirf stood firm in place. Natsu began grunting like a wild animal, red dragon scales beginning to appear around his body. First his lightning dragon mode form, then this blaze dragon king mode, and now dragon force on top of it all. Zirf looked stoically at Natsu, looking rather bored despite Natsu's power nearly doubling and swelling even further. All this power, and yet it is still not enough, Zirf sighed in disappointment, his skin regenerating around his burnt hand like nothing happened. Shut up for once, Natsu growled and then in a surprising move, hoisted Zirf into the air. Blaze Dragon King. Launching Strike. In his left hand Natsu generated a swirling source of his red fire, the fire appearing darker than usual, its red flare almost having dimmed away along with the dragon tattoo on Natsu's arm. Throwing his fist in an uppercut strike to Zerif's gut, the black wizard gawked in pain as he was launched into the air. Your Majesty, Invul shouted from below as he and the knights watched in horror at their emperor being launched beyond the clouds. Zirf was stunned, gawking as he flew over the island they were fighting on, and the other neighboring islands on the vast ocean beneath him. Zerif's eyes cringed, as they were stung by sunlight. No, wait, it wasn't the sun. Right above Zirf, was Natsu. Natsu snickered as he glared down at Zirf, holding his arms above his head with a giant dark red sun crackling with lightning. This is the end, Zirf. Natsu tossed the miniature blazing red sun onto Zirf. Blaze Dragon King finishing move, Sunset. The red sun and Zirf both plummeted down like a giant meteorite, Zirf caught in the plummeting sun unable to escape. Could only grunt as the sun burnt away at his clothing, hair and skin. Grr. Zirf tried to form some form of defense, although then it came to him. Could this attack actually kill him? Zirf smiled, and allowed himself to continue plummeting down to the earth with Natsu's attack. Invul gawked, seeing the blazing dark red mini-sun carrying his emperor plummeting into the neighboring island. The island itself bursting into flames, the loud booming sound of cracking came from the island. As the sun continued to plummet, and the island collapsed and sunk into the depths of the ocean with it. The blazing red mini-sun created such a warm red light, that it really did resemble the setting sun. Zirf was still plummeting along with the red sun, the water around him beginning to boil. Several underwater creatures fried from being too close to this blazing red menace. Zirf felt the weight coming crushing down onto his body, his bones reduced to dust, as he and the red sun continued until they reached the bottom of the ocean floor. Natsu, still free-falling in the sky, held his hands out and balled them into fists. Now for the big finale. And then, an explosion rocked the surface, the water looking unruly and raising into massive waves. And a ton of steam rose from the boiling waters. Natsu smirked with a sense of satisfaction, flipping in the air and landing onto the island where Invul and the near million Alvarez knights awaited. Now, for the rest of you, Natsu panted, clearly winded from having over-exhausted himself in that battle. Even for Invul it became obvious, Natsu's body was twitching in pain. His arms looking, they had been shredded from all the lightning and fire. Invul was at a loss for words, his emperor now laid on the bottom of the ocean floor. Invul became concerned as a thought he had never even expected would ever cross his mind was creeping up to the surface. Was Zirf actually dead? The once fiery landscape instantly froze into ice as Invul balled his fists into a fit of rage. The knights trembled at seeing the rage in someone that is usually so calm and composed like Invul. And now he's done it, a knight trembled. His Majesty, is he really dead? And on Invul froze the knight in a block of ice, shattering his body into crystal-sized pieces in an instant. His Majesty cannot die. Invul snarled at the knights, as a warning for no one else to speak their minds. Natsu chuckled at seeing Invul's reaction. I wouldn't be so sure about that, buddy. But you can find out for yourself, once I send you to him. Natsu kept a strong posture, refusing to seem weak now. A fire still strongly burned within him. Natsu, however, suddenly felt, as if the never-ending fire in his belly had been snuffed out. As a cold dark presence filled the air, Natsu froze on the spot, trembling in disbelief. Slowly Natsu turned his head. And no way. That was a good attack. I definitely felt that one all over. Natsu gasped along with Invul and the other knights, rising from the waters, and stepping onto the beach of the island. Was Zirf, his right arm nearly severed as it dangled from a few nerves like a piece of meat. His entire ribcage was exposed along with his heart that wasn't even beating. All his clothes except for his pants having been burned away, his right pant leg was gone along with the flesh of his leg exposing his bare bone. His face looked like something straight out of a horror movie. Half of Zeref's face had melted, his right eyeball gone leaving an empty eye socket. And the skin and flesh around the right side of his lip having been burned off. Darkness flashed over Zeref's body, and the moment it had passed his body was completely healed of any injury. What's wrong, Natsu? Was that it then? Your big finisher. What was supposed to kill me? I must admit, no one has ever damaged me like that in a long time. But killing me? Hardly. Zeref stepped onto the shore, and approached Natsu. Zeref's smile sent chills down Natsu's spine. Natsu shakingly backing up, looking in genuinely fear. Stay away from me. Natsu backed away, his body drenched in sweat. Ah, are you scared? I'm hurt. I'm your brother after all. Zeref pouted a bit, before his malice leaked out and he began cackling like a madman. Tell me, can't you do more? Draw out more of END's power. Natsu flinched, his fear overcome with a sensation of rage. If he had some sort of hidden power, he needed to use it here and now. But he couldn't feel any special magic power in his body. Arg, screw it, I'm going to snuff you out with what I have left of Ignil's power. Natsu unleashed a violent torrent of fire from his body. Zeref's smile widened, and he pointed at Natsu. Take a look again, Natsu. Ignil's power is already gone. Natsu flinches and looks to his arm, seeing the dragon tattoo having long since been burnt away. But he could feel it, he was still using the power he had harnessed all those months ago. Wasn't he? Like I said, the more of Ignil's power fades, the more your power reveals its true colors. Zeref snickered, letting Natsu take a moment for it to sink in. Looking around, Natsu saw his fire was no longer red. It was like his usual dragon fire, but it was mixed with black fire. Not like the God Slayer flames of Zankro, not even like the flames of Amaterasu Itachi used. No, these flames looked far darker, demonic even. What is this, fire? I've never felt anything like it, Natsu uttered in awe, and with a slight hint of fear escaping his nearly cracked voice. This is END's curse power. Demonic hellfire. I can sense it, END is trying to break out from your subconscious. Seems our battle has awoken END from his slumber. Natsu, falling into a state of panic, on instinct shuts off his flames and power. The dragon scales on his body fading, the lightning from his lightning flame dragon mode vanishing. There was no denying it now, Natsu was END, he was a demon of the Book of Zeref. Natsu stood there, the state of shock having left his body immobile. He was a demon, a monster. What even am I? Was he a human, dragon, demon, what was he? Zeref, seeing Natsu's now state of panic, only sighs. Guess you can't destroy me after all, how disappointing. Raising his hand, Zeref summoned forth the Book of END and looked to Natsu. Worry not, I'm not going to kill you. I love you too much to do something like that, but I think you have earned a nice long rest. Natsu, although thick-headed, pretty much got the idea of Zeref's wording. Zeref was going to seal him into that book. And no, please, don't. Natsu, for the first time, found himself so frightened he actually pleaded for his life in a sense. Don't worry, once you wake up, we'll be back in our childhood home, with mother and father waiting for us. Once I use Fairy Heart, to erase this era that is. This battle was over, and Zeref was the clear victor. Happy, Lucy, Gray, Urza, Itachi, everyone, I'm sorry. Natsu fell to his knees in defeat, trembling in fright over seeing the Book of END in Zeref's hand. But then, END will be gone from the battlefield. No one would have to worry about him going crazy if this demon in him really woke up. Maybe, I should just disappear. As that thought crossed his mind, something in Natsu snapped. Zeref halted himself, hearing the clear sound of what sounded like a beating heart. Is this? Zeref eyed Natsu, heat emitting from his very body and his body vibrating in mimic to Natsu's ever-growing heartbeat. What's happening? Natsu clutched his hand onto his head, feeling an immense jabbing pain. Natsu growled in pure agony, twisting and turning, feeling like something was pricking at his brain. Feeling feverish, which was quite unusual for Natsu. Natsu's flames completely shut themselves off. Natsu's eyes rolling into the back of his head, and the next moment he falls over face first into the ground in a loud thud. My, seems you have your own inner struggle going on. Zeref held out the Book of END and gave Natsu a pitying gaze. I very much enjoyed our reunion, my dearest Natsu. Darkness oozed out around Zeref and out from the Book of END, forming into demonic-like hands reaching out for Natsu's body. A demonic hand of darkness balled itself into a fist, and then it shot forward, burying itself deep into Zeref's face. Zeref's flesh and bone groaned from the impact, his nose getting broken in the process. Itachi had arrived in his stage 2 demon transformation, with his hands cloaked in darkness. Itachi heaved his fist upwards, launching Zeref far into the heavens. Following Itachi, was a ray of light crash landing next to him. The light carried Jalal Fernandez, who went instantly into a stance. May the 7 stars bring judgment upon you. Grand Chariot, 7 rays of light launched from the heavens, and onto the falling form of Zeref. The Black Wizard letting out cries of agony from the burning light, and the attack's level of explosive power. Your Majesty, Inbal rushed to his emperor, while carefully eyeing the new intruders. Natsu, coming soaring down from the heavens, was the wailing little blue exceed Happy. Happy clutched onto Natsu, although quickly backed up from the sheer heat released from Natsu's body. Hot. Happy shook his poor burnt little paws. Itachi eyed Natsu, kneeling down and holding 2 fingers to Natsu's neck to check for a pulse. Itachi narrowed his eyes, seeming troubled. Itachi moved his hand to Natsu's forehead. He was burning up, he clearly had a fever. Almost just like when he took over me during Tartaros, Itachi recalled feeling feverish and an immense stabbing pain in his head. Happy, get him out of here, and take him back to the Guildhall. Get Perliuzica to check on him. From what Happy had told them, if Natsu was END it could mean trouble. But, I can't carry him if he is this hot. Happy looked at his slight burnt paws. Without even batting an eye, Itachi shot out 2 small specks of darkness. The darkness cloaking itself around Happy's paws like mittens. Go, me and Jalal will take things from here. Itachi flared up in an aura of darkness, while Jalal flared up in a golden flaming aura. Jalal looking eager to get a shot in at Zirf, the source of his sins, and the one he was out to eliminate. Happy approached with caution, gently reaching out for Natsu. And the specks of darkness on his paws really did help. He could really carry Natsu without the risk of burning himself. Happy looked with concern, and quickly took off with one goal in mind. Get Natsu to the Guildhall, and to Lady Perliuzica. Zirf picked himself back up, healing his newer injuries. Zirf looked at Natsu, who disappeared into the horizon, and then to the book of END laying next to him. Hey, you know what, that might be fun, to see END eventually go on a rampage. Zirf, with his malice clouding his mind, decided against sealing Natsu into his book. Your Majesty, I insist that I aid you. Inval went to his emperor's side, this time met with no objection. I agree, these two might be too much even for me. Zirf and Inval, in response to Itachi and Jalal's power, flashed their own. Zirf releasing his dark black aura of death, and Inval an icy chilling aura. You think the others are alright? Jalal asked, seeming concerned for the rest of the squad on the battlefield, especially Urza. They should be, they have reinforcements. Itachi assured, and the two instantly charged forward at Zirf and Inval. An hour ago, on the battlefield, while Natsu had snuck away attacking the main island base of the enemy and fighting against Zirf. Itachi fought alongside with Jalal and Urza at the battlefield, blowing away all the Alvarez knights like a house of cards. The sheer force of an air punch from Itachi, with just an ounce of demonic darkness, sent hundreds of knights flying. And the sheer force of Urza swinging her sword, sliced through dozens of knights, the ones standing up front even having their armor cut through like a hot knife through butter. And with a wave of his hand, Jalal sent several golden meteorite beams raining down onto incoming enemy airships. Yet despite this trio's overwhelming power, their forces found themselves overrun by the might of the Alvarez Imperial Navy. Eventually, even Itachi, Jalal and Urza found themselves driven into a corner with the few airships that had survived on their side. Whereas Natsu, Urza cut through a cruiser-sized ship with a mere wave of her blade, the air force from it tearing through the ship. Knowing him, he probably went straight for Zirf. Itachi cursed himself for not paying more attention to the pyro. Well, what a surprise this is. Leading the attack of the Alvarez Imperial Navy, were all the former members of Tartaros. Mardgeir in the lead with the 9 demon gates standing at his side. Fate is truly a wonderful thing, giving us a chance not only for revenge, but also, a chance to return to our Maker's side. Mardgeir humbly accepts this gift. Rose thorns shot up from the ground, the long spiky horns carrying multiple rune knights and guild mages' corpses like pieces of meat. Old ghosts from the past, what kind of spell is this? Urza noticed the look in Itachi's eyes. He himself was also baffled at seeing their former dead enemies rising. What is this? It almost looks like the Edo Tensei, but that shouldn't be possible. Itachi recognized the eyes of the reanimated warriors, black around the iris just like those reanimated by the Edo Tensei. And their bodies also covered in cracks. What are we going to do? Our forces have been pushed to the outskirts of the Isles. Hibiki frantically tried to find an escape route of some sorts for the remaining forces to regroup. We ain't runnin'. Bacchus howled, his rage still boiling from the death of Master Goldmine. A rage that was shared by all the members of Quattro Cerberus. Itachi was taken out from his line of thought, when out from thin air one of his summoning crows appeared. This took Itachi's mind of whatever this reanimation spell was. For the return of this crow, could only mean one thing. He had sent this crow through a reverse summoning just before he went with Mest and Makarov to discuss with the Magic Council. No need to worry, reinforcements are on their way. Itachi smiled, and unleashed his demonic power to stage 1, with the black flame markings spreading from his right arm and shoulder, to the right side of his face. Isama, As always, his power is wonderful. Sela let out a longing sigh, staring lovingly at the demon of extinction. Well, I'm honestly not that interested. Kyoka shrugged off the presence of Itachi. Her gaze completely focused on one single person on this battlefield. Right, Urza. Kyoka's smile made her look all the more twisted. Urza remained unfazed before the malicious gaze of Kyoka. Ghosts of people I have defeated in the past are of no concern to me. What was that? Kyoka trembled, not out of fear or anger, but rather excitement. I see, perhaps if you were reminded of our time in that torture chamber, you would be more interested. Kyoka cackled, and without warning jumped towards Urza. Urza didn't even dignify her with a respond, merely reequipping the weapon she had at hand into a spear. The spear was decorated with red roses around the handle, and the blade was curved with a red flaming aura bursting around it. Faster than Kyoka, or any of the 9 demon gates could register. Urza was already in the air, and behind Kyoka, followed by the sound of a slash seemingly from Urza's spear. She moved faster than the speed of sound. Kyoka gave a few gasps, her eyes twitching as suddenly her torso exploded, with red burning fire emitting from the cut. Rose Garden, Urza mumbled under her breath, and what followed was an explosion in the form of a red pillar reaching to the clouds. The zooming sound of the blast, drowning out Kyoka's screams as her body was vaporized to nothing. Anyone else wishes to fall to my blade? Urza intimidatingly glared at the 9 demon gates and the Alvarez Imperial Navy. Kyoka was, Franmalf stuttered in terror and disbelief. Impossible, last time they were nearly evenly matched, Sela uttered in disbelief. While all of you have stayed dead, we've all grown stronger over the past year. Urza, and the rest of us are not the same as we used to be. Itachi declared, the 9 demon gates of Tartaros, once a major threat, was nothing to them now. Cocky bastard, Jackal snarled. Itachi eyed the remnants of the blast, taking note that Kyoka showed no sign of regenerating her body. Whatever this spell was, although it shared a similar nature to the Edo Tensei, was a far cry from the real deal, where one would obtain an immortal body with unlimited chakra and stamina. Any chance of victory is lost to you. Marred Gear, however, unlike the 9 demon gates, was not threatened in the slightest. As with the Alvarez Imperial Navy, they had Ishgar's second attack squad outnumbered by at least 10,000. I wouldn't be so certain. The name is Itachi Uchiha, Itachi declared, angering Marred Gear and the remaining 8 of the 9 demon gates. If you won't join us, then you will die. Marred Gear had massive thick spiky rose vines growing up from beneath the ground with his curse power. The spiky thorns sharp enough to even penetrate dragon scales. The space before the vines starts to warp itself, sucking in the vines and tearing them apart. What is this? Marred Gear looks baffled as his curse was negated by this strange vortex that appeared out of nowhere. That would be our backup. Itachi smiled from the other end of the vortex. To this, even the members of his own squad, even Jalal, looked baffled. What do you mean? Urza questioned her brother. Let's just say I called in some old friends from a faraway kingdom. Itachi's cryptic answer was more than enough for Urza, although she looked in disbelief. You couldn't possibly mean, and as an answer, flying out from the vortex, a metallic fist slugs itself straight into Marred Gear's face. The sheer impact from the fist was enough to send Marred Gear flying several feet away. A figure stepped out from the vortex, closely followed by several others. What the hell is going on here? Jackal snarled. 2 of Isama. No, something is different about the other one. Sela, like the rest of the 9 demon gates, shared a look of disbelief. Another Urza. Jalal also looked confused. Coming out from the vortex last, was a man bearing a set of magical staffs on his back. And his face was covered up by a cloth, and he was dressed in tattered robes. Urza found herself cracking a smile at seeing this familiar figure. Mistogen. Stepping up front of these newly arrivals, was the former commander of the Edolis army, Commander Itachi. He looked out on the 9 demon gates, Marred Gear and the Alvarez Imperial Navy with a scowl on his face. The former commander's appearance having changed over the past 8 years. His hair was cut a bit short, yet his bangs still reached to his shoulders. He didn't have the original Itachi's signature ponytail anymore, and he had a stubby beard, his mechanical arm looking less bulky than before as it looked upgraded. His clothing consisting of a dark blue shirt decorated with the fairy tale emblem in gold, slight white baggy pants, and black combat boots, with a black cape strapped to a pair of shoulder pads from his old armor. Taking a deep breath, the former commander announced in a roaring voice like a war cry. Daedalus fairy tale has come calling. And at Commander Itachi's back were Urza Nightwalker, along with all the Daedalus fairy tale members. All looking ready to brawl, as with Daedalus Itachi they let out a war cry as well. And like the fairy tale members of Earthland, they all eagerly charged into their opponents without any hesitation. All but Mistogen, who took a moment to reunite with his old comrades. It's been a long time, although I can't say you two have changed much. Removing his mask, Mistogen revealed his face, which spooked Jalal a bit, as this was the first time the two counterparts had ever met face to face. Although, unlike Earthland Jalal, Mistogen's hair was slightly longer, and he now had a nasty scar going over his right eye. But what shocked Itachi and Urza the most, was that Mistogen's right eye was replaced by a Sharingan. Seems a lot has happened at your end. Itachi obviously referred to the Sharingan. Ah, yes, it is a long story. Some of my father's loyal devoted followers attempted to assassinate me and reclaim my father's throne. It cost me my right eye, although our Itachi kindly offered me this eye. Mistogen gently touched the scar over his eye, as his Sharingan morphed into the pattern of Obito's Mangekyo Sharingan. I see, he gave you his Obito's eye, huh? Itachi remembered his counterpart showing him his memories, and how the masked man in the Akatsuki claiming to be Madara was actually Obito Uchiha. How did you even contact them? Urza asked, as they would have had to open a portal of some kind to enter Daedalus. I used a reverse summoning contract. Due to my crows being connected to my chakra signature, I was able to send it into Daedalus and to my counterpart. I imprinted a message into one of the crows, and reversed summoned it to my counterpart who shares my chakra signature. I told him of our war with Alvarez, and requested their help in battle. Impressive, Jalal commented, earning him a quick look from Mistogen. They didn't exchange words, because they honestly did not know what to say to one another. Your Majesty, stay back, there is no need to endanger yourself in this battle. Standing protectively over Mistogen, was Urza Nightwalker. It's good to see you again, Nightwalker. Urza greeted her Daedalus counterpart. And you, Scarlet, so, are you all up for this battle? Urza asked with a slight hint of concern behind her voice, as last time she checked Daedalus lost all their magic power. PFFT, no need to worry, Scarlet. We have come prepared. Nightwalker brought forth her old magical spear. Seeing the Ethernano from the space around her sucking itself into her weapon, along with Mistogen's staffs. Besides, we have all learned something else besides magic over the past 8 years. Nightwalker flashed a set of hand signs, and inhaled her breath. Fire style. Dragon flame bomb. Spraying out like gigantic bullets of fire out from her mouth, Nightwalker utilized ninjutsu and blasted 3 of Alvarez's warships out from the sky. Your counterpart has been quite busy teaching everyone ninjutsu for these last 8 years. Mistogen revealed, as he also flashed a single hand sign, vanishing from sight using Shunshin to teleport himself in the center of a crowd of Alvarez knights. Generating a whirlwind of purple flower petals dancing around the knights, paralyzing them on the spot. Genjutsu, Flower Hill, and in a swift motion, all these knights were cut down by Nightwalker. Ah yes, I do remember talking to my counterpart about it after I defeated him. And how he accidentally brought chakra into Daedalus upon his arrival there years prior. Itachi also recalled the personal knights of Commander Itachi who all also utilized ninjutsu. And how when Commander Itachi had used Obito's eye to teleport himself to Daedalus, that he had taken a good chunk of chakra with him to Daedalus. If you don't mind me asking, Nightwalker, are you and Commander Itachi members of Daedalus Fairy Tale? Urza joined in on the battle, taking down an incoming wave of Alvarez troops. I'm not, I am a part of the Royal Guard. However, the former commander, Nightwalker eyed her former superior and lover, who was crushing any opponent that came in his path. Seeing the fairy tale symbol on his clothing. Yeah, the old terror of Daedalus is on our side. Daedalus Lucy stepped up, giving her whip a swing into a crowd of Alvarez knights. Lightning style, lightning surge. Sending a pulse of electricity through her whip, Lucy Ashley annihilated the knights. Wasn't easy, he had a lot of redemption to do after all that he had done, took a few years, with some of us slowly warming up to him. Mira Jane was the first one to accept him. Of course she was. Urza smiled along with Itachi, as out on the battlefield. Daedalus Mira Jane stood back to back with War World Itachi, utilizing hand-to-hand combat taijutsu skills. Both of them as synchronized as they could be, Edalus Mira Jane like an acrobat swung from War World Itachi's robotic arm and flung herself into an Alvarez Knight, delivering a kick that knocked his helmet off. And War World Itachi proceeded to slam his robotic fist into the Knight, smashing his face in and sending his corpse flying into a herd of knights, blowing them all away. The sound of a horn echoed through the valley, and coming cruising through in an automobile was Edalus Natsu. Time to burn some rubber. He cackled as he went full speed, holding a hand seal. Fire style. Burning race track. Generating his fire jutsu into the wheels of his car, the rotating flames of death speeded up the car as it flew from the ground and crashed through a warship. One could hear screams of horror, as Edalus Natsu tore apart the warship from the inside with his car. Fireballs blasting out from magical guns attached to the sides of the car. Tubes from the guns were connected to Edalus Natsu's mouth where the fire generated from. Water style. Surfing dragon. Two figures joined hands, and together they generated a giant tsunami of water, along with a water dragon dancing on top of it. The tall tsunami knocked down all the surrounding warships, giving the forces of Ishgar room to breathe. And the water dragon snatched up any Alvarez ground vehicles, crushing them under its intense pressure. Behind this attack were Edalus Juvia and Edalus Gray, the latter who wore less clothing so he didn't look like a walking ball, and was only wearing a winter coat along with a dark turtleneck undershirt. Are you still feeling hot in this southern climate? Edalus Juvia scowled, seeming a bit embarrassed over Edalus Gray's outfit. Sorry my beloved, but yes, Edalus Gray whimpered a bit. Hey lovebirds, no time for talk, get to fighting. Soaring in was Edalus Jet, shocking a lot of people as this jet made Earthland Jet look like total wimp. Although they were more surprised by Edalus Droy, who unlike Earthland's fat Droy, this one was so buff looking he would give Elfman a run for his money. Shish, shut up. Edalus Juvia looked embarrassed. Geez, they have a kid together and she still gets embarrassed. Edalus Droy sweat dropped. With so many Alvarez Knights already cleared out, the Edalus Fairy Tail members turned to the reanimated Tartaros members. With the nobodies out of the way, War World Itachi jumped down before Margear, glaring down on the unimpressed demon. Let's take these chumps down next. Damn you, taking the strongest one for yourself. Edalus Jet and Droy both jumped down. Who wants to take us on amongst you losers, huh? They boldly looked out on the reanimated Tartaros members, although all of them looked on with a lack of interest. What's the deal with them? Edalus Jet asked. I don't know, for some reason they don't take us seriously. The two strong Edalus Fairy Tail members, completely unaware on how the presence of their Earthland counterparts made the enemy look down on them. Even the Alvarez Knights didn't acknowledge them. Oi you lame ass chumps. At least come and fight us. Edalus Droy roared in rage. Jeehee, your souls won't be worth much, but I Franmalth shall take you on. The armored one-eyed member of the 9 Demon Gates stepped up. Landing down onto the battlefield was Edalus Mira Jane, and instantly she gained the interest of someone. Sela came flying up, right to Edalus Mira Jane's face, staring her down with a hateful scorn. Oh my, you look upset. Your face, your scent, your voice, I hate you. I hate you, I hate you. Looking crazed, Sela glared down at Edalus Mira Jane. Even though it wasn't the same Mira Jane she fought, it didn't matter to the Aetherius demon. Oh dear, Edalus Mira Jane looked rather uncomfortable. Coming rolling in, was Edalus Natsu in his car, and landing onto the car was Edalus Gray. Ready best buddy, Edalus Natsu smirked within his car. You know it pal, Edalus Gray smirked. That is so freaky. Everyone who knew Earthland Natsu and Gray commented silently. Stepping up to the playing field was Tempester and Torafuzar, staring down at the Edalus counterparts of Gray and Natsu. These weak versions think they can take on the 9 Demon Gates. Torafuzar stared down on the Edalus duo. I don't see that lightning one who took me out, but I will take what I can get. Tempester seemed carefree. More figures from the Edalus Fairy Tail entered the fray, looking for a fight. Edalus Lucy, Wendy, and Juvia. They were instantly met with Historia Jackal, Easel and Keys. So, which one of you freaky-looking sons of bitches want to go? Edalus Lucy looked down at the Tartaros members with a cocky grin. This blonde bitch sure is cocky compared to the other one. I will still enjoy blowing this bimbo up. Jackal cackled, and Edalus Lucy stepped up to Jackal. Guess it is you, my such cute ears. Edalus Lucy straightened her whip. This one is taller than the pipsqueak I fought, but I always enjoy a bit of meat on my prey. Easel licked his lips, eyeing Edalus Wendy, who looked creeped out. I could never predict such a fated encounter. Keys cackled. Fated encounter. Sorry, but that cold sensitive wimp over there is my man. Daedalus Juvia glared back at Keys. Guess we can stand back for now. Itachi sat down, casually catching up with Mistogen. Arrogant bastard, Mard Gear snarled and was about to attack, although was met with a headbutt from War World Itachi. Oi, bastard, you got some nerve to ignore the opponent standing before you. Their heads locked together. Mard Gear glared into War World Itachi. I have no need to fight the lesser version. In response, the entire island began to tremble, and Mard Gear stepped back a few steps as a result. Losing face before this sudden pressure of power. Lesser version, you say? Try saying that now. The ground tore apart beneath War World Itachi's feet, and boulders flew around him whilst getting torn apart by the blue veil of chakra emitting from him. Between the flying boulders, Mard Gear saw the blazing eternal Mangekyo Sharingan eyes of War World Itachi staring right at him. Oi, use your full power already, before I get bored and kill you on the spot. The smirking face of War World Itachi burnt deeply into Mard Gear's mind, enraging him to the point of no return. His memory flashing to the smirking faces of Natsu and Grey. You dare face the king of the underworld? All you humans are beyond arrogant. Mard Gear snarled in rage, and instantly a pillar of darkness exploded around him. His body altering into his ethereous form. My curse shall drag you to the deepest pits of hell. PFFT, you know nothing of hell. War World Itachi snorted. Truly his personality was the opposite of Itachi's. He was a man shaped in the war shinobi world, filled with lies and betrayal. Alegria, uttering in a single word, Mard Gear unleashed the curse he trapped the members of Fairy Tail in a year ago. A fleshy tissue forms from the very ground beneath their feet, surrounding the entire area. Oi, you kidding right? Jackal roared as each of their opponents, including Daedalus Lucy, were caught up in it. Mard Gear, I wanted to kill this bitch. Mard Gear didn't pay them no mind. Even the Alvarez Knights were caught up. Alegria, its flesh tissue devouring them and entrapping them. Perish, arrogant human, Mard Gear snarled at War World Itachi, who merely snorted, despite most of his body having been engulfed in the flesh of Alegria. The Alegria tissue around War World Itachi blew off, as a red blazing light surrounded his body. Sealing Jutsu, War World Itachi uttered, as out from the light appeared the full upper body Susanoo, wielding the Tatsuka blade. The blade piercing through the flesh of the Alegria curse. The Alegria was sucked into the gorge of the blade, saving everyone from getting trapped within the fleshy tissue prison that was Alegria. Got anything else up your sleeve? Mard Gear snarled, enraged that a human had overcome his curse. You will wish you had been trapped within Alegria soon, human. Mard Gear unleashed rose thorn binds from the ground, piercing even through the Susanoo. The spectral warrior being ripped apart from Mard Gear's curse. Mard Gear rushed in at War World Itachi, slamming him in a lariat and dragging him out from the Susanoo. Mard Gear dragged War World Itachi through a mountain, and following by smashing his body into the ground. Sending rose thorn vines up from the ground, piercing through War World Itachi's body. Is that all you got? Appearing behind Mard Gear, War World Itachi inhaled his breath and unleashed a mighty fireball that eclipsed even the cruiser ships of the Alvarez Empire. Mard Gear gasped as the former commander he had dragged through the mountain, exploded into a murder of crows. Before he had time to react, the massive blazing inferno engulfed him, sending him blasting off into the ocean. I will go after the bastard, War World Itachi announced. Have a safe trip, Daedalus Mira Jane called out, making the former commander blush a bit as he took off. Whilst Daedalus Mira Jane avoided a slash from Aetherius form Sela. My, you are an eager one. Daedalus Mira Jane casually giggled as she delivered an elbow strike to Sela's chin, followed by a spin kick to her chest. All whilst Daedalus Mira Jane flashed a set of hand seals. Lightning style. Lightning blade. Charging a surge of lightning into her hand, Daedalus Mira Jane jabbed it forward like a blade, piercing straight through Sela. The Aetherius demon didn't care and kept pushing onward with a goal in mind. Bash in the face of a woman who seduced her beloved Isama. They all seemed to have grown quite strong. Itachi commented as he and Urza were surprised that the Daedalus Fairy Tail members went toe-to-toe against the 9 demon gates. Indeed, the former commander has trained them well, Urza Nightwalker declared as she and Mistogen merely sat back and watched with them. All of them are some of your counterparts' best students. Well included Nightwalker, Levi and me of course, Mistogen commented. No need to be modest, your majesty. King Jalal is without a doubt stronger than all of them, even stronger than myself. Nightwalker proudly boasted about her king. So, in your world you are a king? Jalal asked, for the first looking curious in Mistogan. I understand your life here turned out differently. Mistogan replied, seeming a little awkward. That is putting it lightly. Jalal gave a light chuckle, then Jalal's expression turned a bit sour as he asked. So, you know of my sins? I heard of them, when I was a part of Fairy Tale. Mistogan confirmed, seemingly wanting to drop the subject. Well, it pleases me to see another side of me that wasn't corrupted by darkness. Jalal gave a slight saddened smile. Jalal, Urza tried to reach out, and put a comforting hand on Jalal's shoulder. But before she could, Itachi, coming flying in, was none other than Happy. The Exceed looking in tears as he called out for help. This is bad, really bad. Natsu is in trouble. Happy flew into Itachi's arms. Where? Was all Itachi asked as he gave a few comforting pats to Happy. I will show you, quick. Before Zirf hurts him. That got Jalal's attention. Urza, take care of things here. Jalal said as he took off along with Itachi and Happy, his personal mission of destroying Zirf quickly taking over. Be safe, was all Urza could muster as she saw them vanish off into the distance. Scarlet, Nightwalker called out, earning her counterpart's attention. Are you, and your Jalal, a couple? Nightwalker asked bluntly. What? No. Urza's face turned the same color as her hair. We can't, he won't because of his sins, and... How pathetic, me and his majesty have gone way farther. To this Mistogan blushed a bit. Nightwalker, just tell him what you want, and get to it. It's that easy, Nightwalker bluntly stated, to which Urza looked slightly embarrassed, although she was taking notes as Nightwalker continued giving advice. Much to Mistogan's embarrassment. Out in the ocean, thorny rose vines stretched out, latching onto a tiny deserted island. And crawling onto it, was the winded and burnt Mard Gear. His injuries slowly regenerating. Wretched human, he is a mere pale imitation of E. How dare he defy me? The answer is quite simple. Mard Gear looks up and is met with a boot to the face. I defy you, because I have no reason to obey you. You call me a mere pale imitation of E when it is that so-called monster that is a pale imitation of me and my counterpart. And speaking of pale imitations, you are no demon king, or king of the underworld. You are nothing more than a failed experiment by this so-called Zirf. You know nothing. I am one of the mighty Zerif's creations. No mere human can ever surpass me. In a desperate attempt, Mard Gear powers up to his max power. This human did, a long time ago might I add. War World Itachi merely stood there with an unimpressed look on his face. And by the looks of it, many others did as well. Silence. Just die, you insolent lower life form. Mard Gear, having completely lost his cool, summoned forth his mightiest attack. Memento Mori, enveloping the entire surrounding area in a dark mist, and to really catch the former Daedalus commander off guard. What appeared to be souls, were crawling out from the ocean around them. Not just any souls, the souls of anyone that had been killed by War World Itachi. Like vengeful spirits, they latch onto their killer. Now human, perish into oblivion. Stretching his hands out, the spirits of the dead all explode into a massive destructive pillar of dark light. Reaching beyond the heavens, with the screams of the souls crying out with the blast. And for a split second, War World Itachi actually looked spooked as he was engulfed into the blast. Mard Gear lowered his arms, as the blast died down. Seeing nothing but a massive hole in the ocean floor. The water having split apart, so one saw nothing but a dark abyss leading to the bottom of the ocean floor. Mard Gear flapped the wings of his ethereous form, and let out a cackling sound of victory. Yes, I won. I annihilated that arrogant human. I, the Underworld King, Mard Gear, shall overcome this spell, and return to Zirf. And thus, fulfill my one true purpose. Yeah, not wanting to spoil the moment, rising from the deep abyss, was the massive red glowing armored head of the perfect Susanoo. But, did you try this on my Earthland counterpart? If you did, what made you think it would work on me? The perfect Susanoo towered over Mard Gear, who now began trembling. And no, this can't be happening again. So, you did try it against him. Honestly, you should have thought this one through. War World Itachi shook his head in disapproval. N9 Demon Gates, come to me at once and assist me. Mard Gear called out through a telepathic link, yet got no response. Why aren't you worthless ingrates responding? Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but I don't think they will be coming. War World Itachi smirked down upon Mard Gear. Back on the mainland, the 9 demon gates had all been vanquished. Daedalus Jet and Droid tag-teamed Franmoth, who stood little to no chance, as Daedalus Jet ran in circles around him, creating a massive tornado. And Daedalus Droid added to it, by throwing a series of boulder-sized rocks into it. The violent wind, with the added pressure onto the boulders, tore Franmoth apart into nothing. Daedalus Natsu and Grey had both teamed up against Torafuzar and Tempester. Daedalus Grey using ninjutsu to create a thick mist around them, for Daedalus Natsu to blast them with fireballs from the cannons of his car. And together they ripped the 2 Tartaros members to shreds, with Daedalus Grey utilizing wind and water element into creating some sort of ice shard combo, and Daedalus Natsu charging a big fire blast from his car, as well as ramming his car straight into Tempester for extra kicks and sending a surge of lightning through it to numb Tempester's body. Daedalus Wendy had surprised Easel by creating a massive wind tornado to blow him away, to which Urza Nightwalker jumped in, delivering the killing blow, while Daedalus Juvia had used the mist created by Grey to send a surge of water into Keys and blow him up from the inside like Earthland Juvia once did. Daedalus Lucy also made short work of Jackal, using her whip as way to attack Jackal from a safe distance without falling for his curse power, and eventually sending a bolt of lightning raining down onto Jackal from the heavens to incinerate him. Along with Daedalus Levy, who got sick of Daedalus Lucy hogging the spotlight, by blasting Jackal with a torrent of fire and wind to intensify the flames. And once Daedalus Mira Jane got tired of playing around with Sela, she created 20 shadow clones of herself, and delivered a series of kicks into Sela's body, sending her into the sky, to which Daedalus Mira Jane and 2 of her shadow clones joined in on a dropkick. One with a lightning element surging around her leg, the other with wind, and Daedalus Mira Jane with fire. The triple dropkick blew Sela's arms off and sent her plummeting like a meteor to the ground, where she was blasted by a fireball jutsu from all the shadow clones and Daedalus Mira Jane and blown into oblivion. Back out on the ocean, Mard Gear was shaking in disbelief. How? This Daedalus dimension is supposed to be inferior to Earthland. How are the lesser counterparts defeating the 9 demon gates? In terms of magic, yes, Daedalus is inferior to Earthland. But thanks to me, Daedalus now has chakra. And I spent the last 8 years training this sorry bunch into becoming shinobi-like warriors. And out of all of them, Urza, Mira Jane, Natsu, Grey, Lucy, Levy, Jet, Droid, Wendy, Juvia are some of my greatest students. Judging by the power my Sharingan is picking up, only Urza and Mira Jane out of those I mentioned would be stronger than you. But none of them are a match for these so-called Spriggan 12. Of course, except for me and my number 1 student, King Jalal, or rather Mistogan as he is called in Earthland. Take this lesson to the grave: don't underestimate Idola's fairy tale. The perfect Susanoo raised its massive sword, and Mard Gear, unable to move his legs out of fear, could only gawk as the blade came crashing down on him, not only cutting him in half, but also creating a massive explosion of the Susanoo red fire-like aura. The screams of Mard Gear echoed, as his reanimated body was vaporized into nothingness. Back in Magnolia, within the basement of the Fairy Tale Guildhall, the lonely country demolisher, Brandish sat alone in her cell. All that filled this lonely silence of hers was her longing sigh. Fist, a familiar voice whispered, "Brandish-sama." Brandish rolled her body around, and faced her loyal pet and second-in-command, Marin. "Marin, as expected of my pet, well done. Now remove these restraints so we can complete Invel's mission." "Yeah, about that, change of plans." Marin smiled maliciously as he pounced on Brandish, pinning her to the floor while holding his hands around her throat. "You've been treating me like a slave. And that's why, hey, you fail." Unable to summon forth her magic power, all Brandish could do was gag as Marin tightened his grip around her throat. "Now we're going to have some fun." Marin moved one of his hands to his belt. What do you think you are doing? Why you won't get away with this?" Brandish knew Invel wouldn't just let Marin get away with something like this. Even this fool needed to know that she was one of the 12, he was a nobody goon. "Actually, all I need to say is that the mages of Fairy Tale killed you. And I, the noble Marin and your replacement, successfully escaped with the fairy heart through my spatial magic. It is the perfect plan." Marin cackled in a maddening voice, as he unbuckled his belt and dangerously moved his hand closer to Brandish's chest. "Only one problem," a voice called out, causing Marin to freeze on the spot. "You are super loud." Looking down on him from behind was Lucy, Lizana, Mikao, Wakaba, and Romeo. Yay, and the second mistake you made, bud, Mikao and Wakaba both cracked their knuckles. Yeah, only we get to make the women here uncomfortable. That's not something to boast about, Dad. Romeo looked in embarrassment over his father. Seriously, what a creep, and they are supposed to be on the same side. Lizana looked at Marin in disgust. MMMF. You all fail. Before he can do anything, Lucy and Lizana instantly slams their fists upside his head, Lucy while in her Taurus star dress form, and Lizana while in her Neko girl form. And thus, it was an instant knockout. Toss this creep out, Lucy sighed, and Mikao and Wakaba obliged, carrying the unconscious Marin away. Then in an unexpected act of kindness, Lucy kneels down before Brandish. Are you okay? Does your throat hurt? Do you maybe want some tea? Brandish looked taken aback at the kindness displayed from her captor. I'm fine. Brandish glared suspiciously at them, not willing to accept anything from them, thinking they only want to sweeten up to her to gain intel. Lucy, seeing the look of distrust in Brandish's eyes, knew there was no need to push her further. Lucy along with Lizana walked away while Romeo offered to stay guard, not only to prevent Brandish from escaping, but also to keep an eye on his father and Wakaba from doing anything shamelessly. As Lucy and Lizana walked out, they walked by Mikao and Wakaba chaining Marin to the wall with magic restraint cuffs. With the spatial specialist's magic power blocked out, Brandish had lost any chance of escaping. Although seeing what her second-in-command attempted, it is likely if she ever escaped, she would kill him. Are you worried about Natsu? Lizana asked, remembering how it was listening to Natsu talking about fighting Zirf himself. No, I have faith in him. Lucy smiled confidently. You know, there is something you and I haven't addressed yet in Natsu's regard, is there? Lizana giggled a bit at seeing Lucy's puzzled expression. If you are going to deny there is anything special between you, maybe I will have him take up on our childhood promise. Lizana teased, finding Lucy's sudden expression to be gold as the celestial mage realized what Lizana meant. And no, Lucy blurted out, no to that there is anything between you. Or no to me trying to make a move? Lizana asked teasingly. Aye, what brought this on all of a sudden? Lucy quickly dodged the question and changed the subject. After seeing Miranne get married, you could just say there is a romantic sensation in the air, or something like that. Lizana walked ahead of Lucy back into the guild with the others. Upstairs, Laxus was gearing everyone up to take back Magnolia, and push any Alvarez Knights from Agil and Brandish's squad out of town. Even Lucy went out along with Lizana to scout the area. In the end, the only ones who stayed behind in the guild hall were Laxus, Makarov, Warad, Kana, Itachi's crow clone, Warren, Mikao, Wakaba and Romeo. As Lucy and Lizana patrolled the street, they were interrupted by the sound of a wailing crying Happy. And in his tiny paws he was carrying an unconscious Natsu. Natsu. Lucy looked a little shocked, instant filled with worry. Happy. Lizana called out, looking with equal concern. The Exceed didn't halt, but looked back at Lizana, his mother figure. What happened? Zirf was too strong, was all Happy was willing to say, not wanting to mention the END part. As after he had told that to Itachi, Itachi had told him to keep it a secret for now from the rest. I can't talk, I've gotta take Natsu to Perliuzica. With a mission in mind to heal his father figure and best friend, Happy took off at max speed. Lizana and Lucy looked unsure of what to do. On one hand they were supposed to look around for any Alvarez Knights hiding within Magnolia. On the other, Natsu was injured. Lizana looked around, seeing her brother Elfman looking around in some broken buildings. I will go help Elfni. Lucy, you go and make sure Natsu is okay. Lizana rushed over to Elfman to aid in the search. And Lucy without hesitation sprinted into the forest towards Perliuzica's house. Lucy ran so fast, that she nearly even beat Happy to reaching the house. Furiously Happy scratched at the door, while calling for old lady Perliuzica. Perliuzica, it's Happy. Natsu is beaten up, he needs help. Please, it's an emergency. Lucy joined in on banging at the door. Perliuzica-san, please open the door, Natsu needs help right away. No need to bang on the door. The shrieking voice of Perliuzica came from the other side, as the door opened up. Bring that idiot in here. Perliuzica stepped in, to which Lucy carried Natsu in for the already tired Happy. I swear, he is just like Makarov was when he was young. Perliuzica sighed at seeing Natsu's condition. Drop him on the bed, and I will see what is wrong with him. Perliuzica instructed, bringing some jars with some magical potions. You brats have done it this time. The magic power I am sensing outside, it's out of this world. The room quickly heated up like they were inside a furnace. Lucis' arms even looking red with a few burns from just carrying Natsu. Why is it so hot in here? What's wrong with Natsu? Lucy along with Happy and Perliusica all started sweating buckets from the sheer heat unleashed from Natsu's unconscious body. Just what is it that plagues you, child? Perliusica gently put a cold towel on Natsu's forehead, the moistened towel drying up in an instant. We need to cool him down, I can't inspect him like this. Meanwhile, up in the northern parts of Ishgar, the holy figure of Larcade gracefully landed on top of a mountain with 3 feminine figures standing by the edge overlooking the battle. There you are, took a while to find you. Lady Irene. Larcade's eyes trained onto the taller woman. A tall voluptuous woman with thickly braided, bow-adorned, scarlet hair. Her attire was a risque black witch garb. The lower half of her top exposed in a diamond-shaped opening revealing the underside of her boobs. And another opening in a heart-like shape around her stomach area exposing her belly button, and also exposing a large angular scar. Flapping in the wind, is her black cape, with 2 golden medallion ornaments around the neck area connected with a golden chain. And her lower half consisted of a black loincloth with the Alvarez symbol decorated onto it. And she also wears black thigh-high boots, and matching-looking gloves of the same design, with claw-like extensions on her fingers. And to top of the witch look, she wears a black witch hat larger than her head, with a little dreadlock-like design. The hat also has white fur lining near its edges. The strongest woman of the Spriggan 12, Irene Belsarion, turned around to face her fellow Spriggan, her red lipstick-covered lips spread into a thin smirk. Larcade, to what do I owe the pleasure? No need to play coy with me, Irene. You know what is happening right now. Larcade brushed off the playful-like nature of the witch. It's a war, right? His Majesty finally decided to invade Ishgar for Fairy Heart. Irene merely sighed and looked upon the battlefield with little to no care. We missed you at the meeting. Old man August was pretty upset. The mentioning of the leader of the 12 brought a smirk onto Irene's face. Oh no, should I expect a spanking of some kind as punishment? If anyone is spanking Lady Irene, I want it to be me, a happy-go-lucky looking girl jumped in. Her size making her look like an overdeveloped child. Her orange hair tied into pigtails, with straight-cut bangs hanging slightly over her face. Dressed in white coat with matching pants and boots. Fool, don't disrespect Lady Irene like that. Coming in scolding her counterpart, was a youthful kunoichi-looking girl. Her black hair leaning slightly to the left side of her face, and around her forehead she had a navy blue bandana. Around her body she had a navy blue cloak with a crescent moon design on the back. Her slim figure dressed in a black skin-tight full-body suit, with net-shaped design on the sides. It's fine Hyena. Juliet's playful nature is a part of her charm. Irene showed little to no care about the attitude of her 2 second-in-commands. Now, why have you come here, Larcade? His Majesty wanted me to just brief you on the situation. Said you would know what needed to be done from there. And there was one other thing of course. And that would be, Irene asked, her tone sounding tired and bored. Nineheart seems to have upgraded his spell, Historia. And now not only generates fake clones of deceased people from the memory of the enemy, but he can now actually pull the souls of the dead from the afterlife, and make them into puppets to do his bidding. What is more, these dead puppets have an infinite supply of magic power, and they never tire. However, Nineheart has already lost a great deal of his dead troops. And we need him to summon more, and far more stronger ones. If you could use your... Before Larcade could even finish, Irene summoned forth a magical staff, and raised it into the air. I got it, she smirked and shot out a red magical beam of energy from her staff, soaring into the sky. Enchantment. Power boost. The soaring beam blasted through the sky like a shooting star, soaring across to the other side of the continent, until it reached its intended target, far out in the open ocean on a cruiser flagship. The beam clashed into an unexpected Nineheart. My power. Nineheart looked to his hands feeling his power having more than doubled. Thank you, Lady Irene, he snickered, bringing his hands together in a hand sign. I should save this special reserve for later, in case Madara decides to betray me. But these 3 will do nicely. His eyes glimmering in a dark tint of purple, as he reached into the depths of the afterlife. Historia Tensei. Across the entire continent of Ishgar, 3 random bodies started acting up. A dead Alvarez soldier in the northern continent began twitching, his body surrounded in some kind of paper. His body growing bigger, bulkier. Minerva and Rogue came to a halt, seeing a soldier they had killed earlier rising back up. What sorcery is this? Rogue backed up a little, noticing what shape the dead Alvarez knight was beginning to take. And no, that's not possible, Minerva trembled. Standing tall before them, the former master of Sabretooth, and Minerva's father, Uchiha. Two traitors stand before me. Seems fate is truly smiling upon me. Uchiha's power flared, feeling far more sinister and deeper than ever before. And down in the southern continent, Itachi and Jalal clashed with Zirf and Invul. Jalal seeming to constantly gun for Zirf every chance he got, blasting the Black Wizard with raining golden rays of light. And Zirf on top of that, had to defend himself from the onslaught attacks from Itachi. Invul was forced to act a supporting role for his emperor, freezing the entire battlefield into a winter wonderland. And halting Jalal and Itachi in their tracks so Zirf had a chance to recover. All the fighting ceased however, as a source of power filled the air. A power rivaling even the mightiest amongst the 12. Rising from one of the Alvarez knights that were burnt alive by Natsu's onslaught earlier. Was a young man with short spiky black hair, dressed in a navy blue, high-collared, long-sleeved mantle that splits down the lower half. And imprinted onto the back, was the Uchiha crest. The rest of the attire of this man of the Uchiha clan were black pants, sandals, and gloves on his hands. His face, forever burnt into Itachi's mind from the memories of Commander Itachi during their battle in Edolis. One half looking fine and smooth, the other looking scared and twisted. On the scared right side of his face, was a burning red Sharingan eye. And on the left side, a Rinnegan. You are, Obito Uchiha. Itachi looked shocked, seeing the man who once posed as Madara in his world, standing before him once again. And what's more, his body was covered in cracks, and judging by his right eye, seeing it was black around his Sharingan iris. Obito looked like some form of Edo Tensei. Just like the members of Tartaros from earlier. Seems Nineheart has gotten a power boost. Invul pointed out, seeing as Nineheart was able to summon forth a warrior with power far beyond his own. Without warning, Obito launched himself towards Itachi, his Sharingan having morphed into its Mangekyu pattern. Kamui. Unable to avoid it, Itachi found himself caught in some sort of vortex. Sucking him, and Obito both in. Jalal looked dumbfounded as Itachi and this Obito vanished into thin air. Itachi landed onto what felt like solid ground. Launching himself up, taking a giant leap. Itachi scanned the scenery, he recognized it from Commander Itachi's memories. This is the place where he killed the Obito of his world, and found himself stuck before taking Obito's eye and using its powers to end up in Edolis. There was nothing more but a dark void, filled with blocks that were marble white. Appearing shortly after Itachi, was Obito. The Uchiha seeming to have gained a form of conciseness. Itachi, this isn't the afterlife, is it? No, it's not. Itachi looked stoic, and merely went into a battle stance. Obito looked sullen, sad in fact. I see, I wanted to be with Rin again. Although it seems, someone just refuses to let me rest. So, it would seem. Kind of like how you and Kabuto wouldn't let me rest. Seems like you have been brought back with a technique that resembles the Edo Tensei. Judging by Itachi's wording, Obito figured Itachi knew the truth then. So, you knew it was me behind that mask? Obito asked, not even seeming surprised in the least. He always kind of figured if anyone would figure out, it would be the child prodigy amongst prodigies, Itachi Uchiha. Not on my own, it's complicated. Itachi didn't have time to explain, nor did he feel like he owed Obito one. I'm sure, Obito sighed, and was forced by Nineheart whispering into his mind, to take a battle stance. Meanwhile, the third body was beginning to wake up in the center of Magnolia. Within the ruins of the apartment of Lucy Heartfilia, one of the bodies left behind by Brandish, began to move. Its shape altering as some sort of paper devoured the body, reshaping it. The body rose from the ground, having taken the shape of a young woman that resembled Lucy herself, only more mature. And dressed in a pink frilly dress that looked proper for a high society lady such as herself. Layla Heartfilia stood in the ruins of her daughter's apartment. Layla's dark empty eye sockets flashing a bit, revealing chestnut brown irises. Layla looked around, seeming confused over where she was. Last she remembered she was on her deathbed, back home, with poor little Lucy by her side. Layla scanned her surroundings. She recognized the town. It was Magnolia. She had been through here a couple of times with her husband Jude on travels. Layla's eyes eventually landed onto a piece of paper sticking out from the rubble of this building. Feeling drawn to it, Layla dug through the rubble, eventually finding a pile of letters, merely addressed to Mom. It was written in such an elegant handwriting. Although, then her gaze landed onto a framed photo. Unable to believe her eyes, she reached out and picked up the photo, shaking out pieces of broken glass. Layla stared in a look of disbelief, yet also lovingly, gently stroking her hand over the photo, which was a family photo. In the photo was her husband Jude, standing behind a chair where Layla sat with a loving smile. With a happy-looking 6-year-old little Lucy sitting on Layla's lap while holding onto a little doll. Lucy. Layla strokes her hand across the photo of her daughter. Then her eyes fell onto the letters that were addressed to Mom, which got Layla thinking. Was these ruins Lucy's apartment? If so, what happened to her daughter? And what happened to Jude? Layla's senses tingled, feeling a magic power shining not too far away like a beacon. And a voice she had never heard before edged her to walk towards it. Layla made her way towards this magic power she felt so drawn to, while carrying the photo and the letters. Nineheart cackled in a maniacal laughter on board his ship. With that done, things should go smoothly. Nineheart smirked, having found a way to take Itachi away from the battlefield. He was sending a warrior, namely Layla, towards Lucy and therefore towards the incapacitated Natsu as well. Having the chance to off them both, things truly couldn't seem to be going better for this madman. Then he sensed something else that filled him with more glee. My, this is just my lucky day. Nineheart cackled. It seems to have made it to the goal. Back in the fairy tale Guildhall, everything was falling into a state of panic. With the loss of Harjin, Warren was busy reorganizing troops. There were those that were injured and needed to be treated, and Perliuzica was already occupied dealing with Natsu. Itachi's crow clone scanned the map, seeing the signal of his original vanishing from the map along with a strange large source of power. Laxus, Makarov along with Ward analyzed the map with Itachi's clone. What happened to the real you? Laxus asked. I don't know. Itachi was at a loss for words. He hadn't counted on any amongst the enemy to be able to use a spell this similar to the Edo Tensei. And he had not counted on his original just vanishing out of the blue like that. Even with the new reinforcements from Edolis, they were heavily outnumbered. Someone's coming, Kana warned, sensing two large sources of magic power coming towards them. Before anyone has time to react, the door to the Guildhall gets kicked down. The doors being sent flying across the Guildhall, Makarov catching them with his hands turned into gigantic size. Who dares attack our home? Makarov roars in rage, although his rage is quickly replaced with a look of shock followed with a gasp. Coming flying in, faster than the speed of sound, crashing like a lightning strike, was Yuri Drayar, grabbing onto Itachi's crow clone by the back of his head, and smacking Itachi's clone into the ground, generating a massive torrent of electricity that blew the roof off the Guildhall. Itachi's crow clone explodes into a murder of crows, but before they can regather into Itachi, they are blasted out from the air by a torrent of dark magic bullets. Laxus, Ward and Makarov all turned towards the doorway, seeing the form of Hades. Or rather, as Ward and Makarov know him, Precht. The reanimated forms of 2 out of the 4 fairy tale founders stood tall before them, with the third founder Ward standing in complete shock at seeing his teammates again. And then, something none had seen before, Ward's face was overcome with a look of rage. Who dares to revive my dearest companions in such an unsightly manner? Ward trembled with anger, his magic power clashing with the power of Yuri and Precht. The entire town of Magnolia was trembling before the power of the 3 founding members. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The next part will be out soon.